Okay, guys, welcome to week 5 of your IT210 class. I wanted to create a real brief tutorial here concerning arrays, which is in Chapter 6 of your reading material, and this week's checkpoint assignment is Chapter 6, Exercise 3, found on page 198. So let's just pull that up real quick. Here's Chapter 6, the PDF downloaded, and here is your assignment right here. Wants you to input list of employee names and salaries, and determine basically the average salary as well as the number of salaries above and below that average. This is a very real-world application. You definitely this comes in very handy to know how to do this. And so I want to walk you guys through kind of a similar assignment. It's not your assignment, right? But it relates directly. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that up. Um, and so the one thing I wanted to explain to you guys first of all is just kind of a quick what are arrays, okay? And so what I did here was I created an example that doesn't use arrays, and let's just go through that real quick. So first of all, I created a main module, and this is just kind of a silly example where the program's required to store off the names of 3 books. Okay, so we declare three books, one called book 1, one called book 2, one called book 3. Why do we declare these 3 variables? Well, because we want to store off the names of 3 books. Okay, so how do we store off the names of these books into these variables? Well, we use the equal operator, right? And we say book 1 is equal to, oh, I don't know, Moby Dick, right? Book 2 is equal to Superman, and then we say book 3 is equal to IT193. So now we've got 3 book names stored in 3 different variables called book 1, book 2, and book 3. And if we want to display these, let's just say that's another requirement of the program. We want to display the names of the books. Okay, so in order to display these, we need to use 3 different display statements, all of them outputting each one of the unique variable names. Book 1, book 2, book 3. Okay, and so when you run this main module, let's say with your fake pseudocode compiler, this is going to be the output that's going to be generated, right? It's going to show book Moby Dick, book Superman, book IT193. Okay, great. What's the big deal? Well, with arrays, what you can do is you can actually declare one variable name, and I call it books, and then you use these square bracket operators, okay, and you give it a number, right? And right here I've given it the number 3, and what this number tells it is that you want 3 copies of this book's variable. Okay, so what's the big deal there? Well, and actually this is a typo here. Let's rename this to book. Okay, so we declared this book variable as an array of 3. So we're saying we've got 3. We want 3 strings called book. Okay, so how do we use this variable? Well, when you use it, you have to tell it which instance of that variable do you want to look at. So what I did was declared the first instance, book 1, equal to Moby Dick, declared the second instance equal to Superman, and declared the third instance equal to 193. This code is basically equal to this code, only instead of using 3 variable names, we're using 1 variable name and numeric values in order to access the 3 different entries of that variable name. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, now that we're actually using a number to represent each one of these different entries, now we can actually use the iterative control structure, for example, a for loop, to iterate through all of these variables. Instead of saying book 1, book 2, book 3, now we can just set up this loop and use this variable called count, and now we can just display each entry using this variable called count, because count's going to start at 1, right? So it's going to come down here and say display book 1, and that's Moby Dick. Then it's going to loop back. It's going to go count equal to 2, display book 2. It's going to loop again, say count equal to 3. It's going to display book 3. and that's going to be your output. So you're going to get the same output, but what I want you guys to realize is that with these arrays, you can use these iterative structures to loop through the variables. You don't have to type in specific variable names. Okay, so why is this a big deal? Well, for things such as, you know, salary information, where you have a bunch of employees, you got a bunch of their names, a bunch of their salaries, you don't really know how many of these employees that you're going to have. This is going to come in very handy, okay? And so what I'm going to show you below is an example that's using planet names and planet distances instead of, for example, salary names, or for example, instead of employee names and their salaries, okay? I'm going to use an astronomy example, okay? So here's my astronomy example, and I didn't want to, it takes too much time to actually just type all this out, so I went ahead and typed this in, but I want to walk you guys through the pseudocode, okay? So I've declared a bunch of variables up here. The first one is user choice, and that kind of basically stores if, you know, when is the user done, and I'm going to show you, you know, where these variables come in handy below. But I just want to kind of show you there's a user choice variable, a planet names array here, right? So we can enter up to 100 planet names. You know, you guys are going to be using employee names. You can enter up to 100 planet distances, all right? And you guys want to use salaries instead, right? And then you want to basically have variables declared for the average distance, the total number above the average, the total number below the average, right? And so I'm going to kind of do what kind of similar to your assignment, but only with planets, okay? So what do we need to do? Well, first we need to create an iterative loop that basically asks the user for the information, right? And I've chosen a do-while loop. That's probably the easiest way. You guys could probably use some other iterative loops. You know, there's 100 different ways to make the same program. Here I've used a do-while loop, and I basically keep looping until the user says, do you have another planet entry? And he types in no, or, you know, basically anything other than yes. If the user types in yes, it's going to loop back around and ask for another planet, right? So that's what user choice does. Up here, the main meat of this do-while loop is here. It asks for the name of the planet, and then after it asks for the name of the planet, it asks for input from the keyboard and stores it into the planet names array, right, using count. And count is initially equal to 0. So the first time it comes in here, it's going to store it in planet name 0, planet distance 0. And now it's going to increment the count by 1. Do you have another planet? The user says yes, loops back up. Now it's in planet name 1, planet distance 1. Do you have another planet? It says yes. Now we store it in planet name 2, planet distance 2. Do you have another planet? Yes. Come back up, planet name 3, planet distance 3. So you can see how arrays are used to make data entry into the computer very, very easily done using a loop, right? Because now all you need is basically a counter that's going to increment through all of the different array entries, right? So this creates, arrays create an easy way of inputting a lot of information with just a counter, right? Because each loop increments the counter by 1, and that also increments the array entry by 1. So now all of a sudden we don't have to come up with planet name 1, planet name 2. You know, we don't have to have 100 different variable names in order to store 100 different planets. We just have an array of planet names, an array of planet distances, and we cycle through them via this count guy. Okay. So when this is all done and the user finally hits no, this count tells me how many entries are in the array. Okay. So what do we do once the user is all done? Well, once the user is all done, now we're going to call the calculate average distance module. Okay. And actually, once we call the calculate average distance module, I also forgot that we want to call this module that I created, and I'm gonna show you guys what these modules are. But I've got two different modules defined. One that calculates the average distance from all the planets. The other that finds the total number of planets that are above and below that average. Okay, and so by calling this module, it's going to calculate and stick in the average distance into this average distance variable, right? That's the whole purpose of this module, is that once he's called and it returns, now we have a value stored in here. The whole purpose of this module is once this module is called and returned, now it has values in this variable and in this variable. Okay, so how does it do it? Let's look at these modules. Okay, and if I'm going too fast, you guys, this is a video. You can pause and look at the code, and then once you understand it, hit play again. Okay, so I got about 5 minutes left here. So the two modules that are left, calculate average distance module. How does it do it? It uses a loop, right? And it starts from 1 and goes to count. What is count? That's the number of planets that the user entered into the system. So what you can do is you have what's called an accumulator. Basically a variable that starts out as 0, and you just take that variable and you add each planet distance, right? And how do we get those planet distances? With the array and this loop count guy, right? This loop count guy is right here. So it's going to start out at 1. It's going to take the planet distance, the first planet distance, add it to total distance, loop back around. It's going to go to the next one, 2, take the next planet distance, add it to the total distance. Going to go to 3, take the next planet distance, right? All the way until it reaches count. And count is basically the last planet that was entered, right? And we know that because that's up here in the main module. We kept looping until the user said no, and so whatever's in count, that's the number of planets that we have. So we loop over the number of planets that we have, and we just keep using this accumulator to store the sum of all the planet distances. Once we have this sum, once we have the total distance sum, now we can find the average just by dividing by the number of planets. Okay, so that's how you find the average right here. How do you find the total number above and below the average? Well, similar to the average, you loop through all of the planets, right? And we know that there are count. This is the total number of planets. And what we do is we use conditional logic. We say, okay, is the planet distance of this particular loop, so planet distance, let's say the first planet, is it greater than average distance, which was calculated up here? If it is, then that's one above the average. So let's add 1 to this total above average guy. Okay? If it's not greater than the average distance, else if it's less than the average distance, then let's add 1 to the total below the average. Okay? So arrays enable you to loop through all of the planet distances and compare them to the average distance, and now you basically have a counter to store the total above average or below average. Okay? And then you just need to end it with this next loop count so that it will cycle through all of the different planets. Okay, and that's basically it. So I know I went a bit fast, but I have to in order to get this into a 15-minute video. But if you have any questions, just pause this video, and I really want you guys to look at this code and kind of understand its meaning. And if you don't understand something, email me the section of code that you don't understand, and I'll explain it to you. But this example is very close to what you guys need to do for your assignment. Okay, that's the tutorial for this week, and I look forward to your submissions. Thanks.